You're listening to 9 Plus, a podcast focused on research at WIT. Thanks for downloading or streaming this episode of 9 Plus. My name is Rob O'Connor from Waterford Institute of Technology. We're following up on the previous episode in which I spoke with Hazel Peavoy of the Walton Institute about the broad agricultural technology area. In this episode, we're diving a bit deeper, though it's still pretty high level, and talking about the use of robots in agriculture. My guests are Christine O'Mara of the Walton Institute at WIT and Kieran O'Donoghue of the Munster Technological University based in the Tralee campus and also the Agri-Tech Ireland cluster. We're discussing the EU-funded cluster they're both part of, AgRoboFood. What it is, who's involved and the kind of stuff that they're working on, from robots that can pick strawberries to others that can target individual weeds with pesticides rather than a blanket spraying, all the way to broadly defining what a robot is in 2022. You can learn more about all of this at agrobofood.eu, and during the conversation we reference a case study written by Christine that's published on the Enterprise Ireland website. There's a link in the show notes if you'd like to have a read of that also. As is customary on this podcast, I began by asking my guests to introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Christine O'Mara with the Walton Institute. I'm a researcher that focuses on commercialisation, dissemination and impact, and I'm leading the local digital innovation hub in Waterford.
Hi, my name is Kieran O'Donoghue. I'm the Educational Outreach Manager for the Agri-Tech Ireland cluster. The cluster is based at the Munster Technological University in the Kerry campus in Tralee.
So I was looking at the website, agrobofood.eu, and front and centre there's a picture of a small, sleek, industrial, kind of shiny white and black robot, and it's holding a strawberry. If a picture speaks 1,000 words, what does that image convey about AgRoboFood? Christine, we'll go to yourself there.
I suppose it's really about how far we've come in terms of what robotics can do, that it can perform such precision tasks as picking up a very delicate piece of fruit. And, you know, it's just, I suppose, so important when you think about some of the challenges we've faced in the past few years in terms of labour shortages that might be caused by COVID or Brexit, for example.
Kieran, would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I think it's a key message portrayed by the image. So more and more we're seeing how machines are interacting more with the produce, with the food. So absolutely agree with that.
Okay, so let's talk about AgRoboFood at a high level. What is it? What's the project? Who's involved?
I'll go in here. I suppose we would be one of the starting partners of the AgRoboFood initiative. And this started off with 39 partners across multiple European countries. And really the overall goal of it is to create this network, a pan-European network of digital innovation hubs. And those digital innovation hubs will foster the uptake of or promote the uptake of robotics in the agri-food sector. And to achieve that, it's really important, I suppose, to demonstrate their applicability and prove the validity, because particularly in arable farming, especially if you look in Ireland or the UK, for example, really we're at the very, very early stages of adoption of robotics technologies. So we had a large number of starting partners, 39 partners all around Europe. We as a digital innovation hub have a technological infrastructure. We can offer a signposting service. We can provide a range of services to SMEs or stakeholders that might be interested in robotics. But part of our mission is to grow this network. And as part of that effort, organisations like the Agri-Tech cluster, which Kieran leads from Tralee, they're new partners to the effort, if you like. So Kieran has his Agri-Tech mission within Ireland, and you know, we participate and collaborate together through our respective organisations and roles and projects.
So would it be fair to say that AgRoboFood is a cluster under which there are a number of projects?
It's it's not quite true. This is, I suppose that is one way of looking at it.
Oh, if it's not now, say it to me. Like that, I'm only trying to understand. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a network of digital innovation hubs. It's quite similar to a cluster. And I suppose we're still shaping our identity. We're still mapping the ecosystem. We're still growing the network. So we're kind of in the first phase of the project. And the next phase then will be about demonstrating the services, promoting the use cases, promoting the pilots that can prove what the technologies can do. And I think Kieran can probably best speak to the agri-tech cluster and how that would differentiate from, or would be different to AgRoboFood.
Yeah, so as Christine has said, mentioned their digital innovation hubs. So the agri-tech cluster that we have based out of Tralee is actually a digital innovation hub. So, and we've connected with Christine on the AgRoboFoods as a member, and in collaboration, then Christine and the Walton Institute are also members in our cluster. So we see it, I guess, in terms of we're one part of the AgRoboFoods community as such, right? We're one member in there where we can, I suppose, get involved in projects that would be supported or led by the AgRoboFoods overall project, and we can then take those project supports and distill them then for our members in the cluster in Ireland. So I guess in the agri-tech cluster, our goal as such, right, is to support agri-tech companies, across Ireland to help them to grow their businesses, grow them internationally, and in doing so to do a number of things. But one of them is to help them with supports in terms of R&D, innovation, this whole space where we are able to be the connection between a company and a research center, for example, to help them to develop a new feature for their product, a new product, or a new process for their business.
Okay, so I'll go back to what I'm trying to just get is an understanding as to what AgRoboFood is. So when I said it's a cluster under which there's a number of projects, what if I said the cluster is really almost like a meeting point for groups with distinct skills that could be complementary to each other, but don't necessarily know each other by virtue of geography or discipline. And AgRoboFoods is a way of bringing people together to assist with robotics technology in agriculture and everything that it entails, whether it's a farmer, a robotics company, a communications company, a company that make widgets, whatever it might be. Would that be a better description?
I think that's fair to say, yeah. So you're right in that in terms of geography, you mightn't have immediate access to the particular technologies or skill set you need, but through a digital innovation hub like the Walton Institute or an agri-tech cluster like that, which Kieran leads, we should be able to connect you. We should be able to identify the right partners, connect you with the right partners and point you towards them. And there are certain, requirements that we can deliver ourselves, like Kieran is co-located with the IMAR Institute, which is a kind of about hardware and mechatronics, and we could help you on the artificial intelligence or the computer vision aspects if you have a need there. So you're right, it is a meeting point. We would see that there are three types of services that might be needed: technology services, ecosystem services, so that's kind of the networking, if you like, the matchmaking, and the business services, whether it's funding or, so they're the kind of things that you might need. So it's cataloguing those services, establishing who delivers them and making them discoverable, if you like.
Okay, so this is obviously such a huge area, and we're going to talk about why it's important in a few minutes, but I'm just trying to get it right in my head as to who the actors are and where we are in the kind of in the European picture. There's lots of groups, individuals, organizations across Europe with a variety of different skills and different competencies. So, for example, Kieran, you're hardware guys. You're involved in the manufacture, or you can make robots. So to go back to our example of the robot holding a strawberry, you can make a robot that can hold a strawberry without crushing it, and can possibly pick it off a plant. but it might have difficulty in distinguishing a strawberry from something else on the plant. So if you needed some assistance with image recognition, you could talk to maybe Walton, who might have competency there, or a group based in Norway or Italy or wherever it might be. And the idea is AgRoboFood would be the matchmaking service that could create those connections across Europe. So the fact that you're in Kerry and Christine, like you're based out of WIT, it doesn't really. That's just a luck that the counties are very close to each other. But it could equally be the other side of Europe. Is that fair enough?
Yeah, I think it's I think you hit on a really important point there, that you can have a robot on one hand doing something, but you need, in order to have a complete working system, you need other, I suppose, hardware or pieces of interface that you need to get it to work as an entire system. And I suppose those skills, then, you need to be able to bring different skills together in a project to make a system work, to make an actual application that can work and do the job that's required, at farm level. And I suppose that's where these collaborations that we're talking about are really important going forward. And I think, if we look at it from the context of where farming is at the moment, there's a growing global population. The population at the moment is close to 8 billion, and that's expected to grow to 10 billion by 2050. And I suppose the amount of land that we have is not going to grow. If anything, it may reduce. And I suppose it's the how do we produce more food to feed those extra people from a global point of view. And I think that's where the technologies, the robotics can have a major part to play, and technology is certainly set to transform, agriculture practice, in the next years ahead.
And if I could just add to what Kieran said, if you think about from an Irish perspective, we need 1,500 seasonal fruit pickers a year. And actually quite a large percentage of those come from other countries. And the availability of that labour was severely hampered in recent years, and it potentially could have, because of COVID, because of Brexit, whatever it might be, but you face a risk of crop spoilage because you have a very short window to pick the fruits, and that's just one instance of a labour shortage, but it exists in many areas. So robots can help solve that as well.
Yeah. So if I could just throw on a kind of a tinfoil hat for a moment, because you'll often hear these things, the robots are coming for our jobs. But the idea with AgRoboFood is that, well, hang on a minute, there aren't actually enough people to do these jobs anyway. And I mean, I'm a technologist, so I think the technology can assist us and allow people to do more exciting things or more interesting things than necessarily the mundane tasks of like picking strawberries. I'm not trying to put any disparagement on picking strawberries, but that's the idea, is that robots can assist in mundane tasks so that people are freed up to do the higher level work. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's fair to say. I mean, jobs are evolving, and you've touched on an area, that whole area of ethics, and concerns around the human impact is one part of that. And actually, there's a stream of work in AgRoboFood related to that, that's considering the implications of this and considering, transition pathways that might be needed to put in place to support kind of job evolution and all of that kind of things. But you're right, it is roles will evolve. It's freeing people up to focus on those other tasks as well.
Yeah, and I think just to come in on that as well, in terms of the food requirement going forward being higher, and we're trying to balance that with the labour element as well, the shortage maybe that we touched on there. There's also, I guess, traditionally, if we needed to produce more food, we'd probably intensify more. We'd add more fertilizers and we'd try and drive things more in that way. But now, we know we are faced with the climate challenges as well, and we need to reduce the outputs, the emissions coming from farming practice. And I suppose then, taking advantages of the technology, and technology has a big part to play in doing in supporting in that as well. So on one hand, you're trying to balance the labor issue. You're trying to produce more with less, let's say. The technology has a role to play there. And then I think also the technology has a role to play in reducing the impact on the environment from the additional food that we need to produce.
Yeah, and that's kind of touches on some of the innovation experiments which we've been funding through AgRoboFood, and which we'll be promoting the outputs of very soon. But a lot of them are focused on precision technologies that will allow you to reduce the amount of pesticide that you use, because it will help you to target the crops that might need pesticide, or the areas of ground that might need the fertilizer. So you're reducing those inputs, which, can be critical, but they can have side effects that are not desirable. So it's just making food healthier. It's reducing the cost of inputs, and it has just so many environmental benefits as well. So the robotic technologies are enabling us to do that with precision spraying, with drones that can zone in on, that can collect data, analyze the data, and zone in on the areas that you need to treat, if you like.
So the idea would be, no, right, I don't have a farming background, so if I'm saying anything incorrect, please correct me, okay? Instead of just blanket spraying an entire field of crops for whatever pesticide is appropriate, you could instead say, okay, there's the weed or the thing that we don't want is only in these small little parts of the field. So we could send the robot in, whether it's a drone or something on the ground, can instead target those smaller areas. You reduce the amount of pesticide you use, or rather than doing the whole field. Is that what you're kind of getting at?
I think that's a very good way to portray it. So, you want to get the maximum benefit out of what you're using, and you want to reduce the costs, the input costs that you need to put in. So, there's also the impact on the soil, and the water courses, that if you're applying more and more pesticides, in a blanket way, you're having a negative impact there, even though you might be treating the weeds situation that you want to control. But ideally, you just hit the weeds where they are. But you can't do that without having the technologies, the robotics, the vision system that can identify where you need to apply that pesticide. So, it's all about that precision farming element in relation to achieving, I suppose, more and more accuracy there. So reducing the input costs while gaining the maximum benefit.
And the other really cool piece to this is that, tractors are powered by diesel. So you're replacing them with robots that can be solar powered, or will use more sustainable, non-carbon emitting sources of energy, if you like. So that's fantastic too.
Yeah. And I was speaking with somebody sometime over the pandemic on a call like this, and they were talking about developing a robot that would actually pick weeds. So there would actually be no chemicals involved at all. The robot was able to go into a field and kind of pull out the offending plant, as opposed to the potato or the plant that they wanted to be there. So you could actually reduce pesticides altogether. Now, I know that I think that was a little bit off. That was a kind of a goal that they hadn't reached yet.
Well, there are experiments going on within the project that are doing exactly that. So the technology readiness of some of these technologies, it's getting to the stage where, we'll really be able to apply them. But they're being demonstrated in real life settings. So this kind of precision weeding is being demonstrated through some of the experiments that are being funded through AgRoboFood. So that certainly would be somewhere we want to get to.
Yeah, I think it's a very active space at the moment. There's a lot going on in the robotics side, and I suppose what we are aiming to do with the Agritech Ireland cluster is to be able to bring supports to companies who are interested in developing robotics in this space. And I suppose we've the vision that Ireland can really be a global player and have a really high impact in terms of the global supply of technologies into this agri-tech space. and we're well positioned to do that. And I guess what we're about is making those connections, providing those supports to companies, connecting with the researchers, connecting with the funding supports, so that companies can actually invest the time to develop these new solutions for agriculture.
And right, so you're talking about companies, but what about kind of farmers on the ground, or people directly involved in farming? Do you have much interplay with them? Do you have much buy-in from them at a conceptual level?
I suppose from the farmer point of view, I think, and there's often the discussion around the adoption of technology in farming, and I think the adoption, is happening at the moment, and it's increasing in pace. And the key thing with it is the price point, right, of adopting these technologies. Does it make financial sense for farmers to actually purchase a piece of technology for their operations, right? So the farming business community, that's the way they look at it, right? And I suppose when we look at food production in comparison to maybe some of the other industries like the med tech or like the pharmaceuticals, the margins, I guess, are not there as much. So really the cost benefit analysis, let's say, becomes really important, right? And it's a difficult one, because obviously there's a lot of cost to develop these technologies. And I think that's where the support of the AgRoboFoods project, for example, helps to really drive those innovations, those developments, that eventually we'll get to a point where it does make financial sense for farmers to take on these sort of new technologies, right? And we see that happening, from adopting software, from adopting sensors. It's happening, and more the systems are getting connected together, at farm level as well. So certainly I think the machine of the future, is not really a concept anymore. It's coming, and it's coming soon. And I think there's a lot of progress being made. And I suppose it's to get to the point where it does make financial sense. So for farmers to adopt the technologies, it's going to have to make financial sense.
So, what Kieran said is spot on. And through those innovation experiments, one of the criteria has been that you have a technology provider and a user, and the user will typically be a farmer. So they're both getting funding to try these technologies and to validate the technologies. But I just wanted to mention something else. Kieran hosted an event in Tralee a few weeks ago, and there was a number of technology providers there, but, agri-tech solution providers, if you like. But those solutions are coming out of farms, really, aren't they? So, there was a number of organizations there where the solution had originated on a farm, and, key people involved in that farming venture are creating technology businesses. They understand the sector, they understand the need, and they're creating fantastic products. I was amazed by some of the technologies that I hadn't heard of.
Could you give us an example of some of those, Kieran?
Yeah, so I guess, and in that workshop that we had, we as part of the cluster, we're developing that approach where the cluster, I guess, in clustering terms, is what's known as the triple helix. So we have the industry players, right, which are the people that are producing the machines, let's say, or producing the software. And one side, we've the knowledge providers like the Walton Institute or like the IMAR Research Centre in Tralee, and we have then also the government and community actors. So the people who are really engaged at farm level, or people that are involved in government level in the Department of Agriculture or Enterprise Ireland, who have an interest in the space. And we are bringing those, I suppose, people together, right, from those different backgrounds, from those different organizations to connect. And one of the programs we're rolling out at the moment is called Agri Team Innovator, where we're trying to build teams of people to come up with new innovations and to be able to drive new ideas. So from the ideas and converting those ideas into an actual innovation project. And I'm sure there'll be some robotics potential projects coming from that discussion. But I think it's very powerful to bring the people together, and that's what the cluster is about, is making those connections, which may not happen otherwise, and I think that's one of the key roles that we have. And as Christine alluded to, we're seeing some really interesting discussions, and coming from those discussions are the potential to develop a lot of projects, so I'd see more and more engagement then with the projects like the AgRoboFoods, in order to get supports to run projects and to get researchers involved, to get researchers engaged with companies, and to make those connections so that can happen.
Yeah, I mean, from my own limited experience, I can think of a couple of practical examples. So, as I said, I'm not a farmer. I've no agriculture background at all. But one of my friends is he's from a farming family, and his brother now runs the farm. He helps out as well. I think, like many farming families, but like, they've adopted drones in the last couple of years. So, you speaking about technology that's becoming financially viable. So, instead of having to kind of get in the car or the tractor, or walk a couple of kilometres up the road, up the fields, they can send out the drone just to check on something, either to check on animals, or check on a fence, or check on a whatever, and then it can come back. Now, like, a drone is not new technology by modern standards, but I'm sure if you said 10 years ago or 20 years ago that a farmer would be flying a drone out across his land to check on something, to be able to see it in high definition and then fly back, would have seemed like Star Trek stuff,
Yeah. And it's probably not that far away, And the thing is, and like that exact example you've given, we've had a number of discussions with companies and research centres to discuss, potential use cases, right, for that kind of technology. Because I suppose when you would fly the drone, you wanted to try and do a number of things, you want to check, as you mentioned, the livestock maybe, but we've also been looking at maybe, the concept of the drone hopping, where you might land the drone on the field at different points to be able to measure the grass height, for example, and you might do that periodically. So rather than the farmer having to go out and walk the land and measure the grass, because I guess in Ireland in particular, we're very much a grass-based system. Most of our land is under grass. If we could have a solution whereby we could have drones deployed, measuring the grass and giving that information then back through an IoT system to the farmers, software application, to give them, useful information to make decisions. Do they apply fertilizer, or do they feed a particular paddock? And these kinds of decisions can make the practice more efficient, the farming, and also can save the labor time for the farmer so that they can do more value-added activities.
There's a podcast I listen to called The Verge. The Vergecast is from their tech blog, and they're constantly having this argument amongst themselves about what is a computer, because the idea of a computer has changed significantly over the last 20 years. Is your phone is a computer, your watch is a computer, but equally the box that's on your desk is also a computer, and many other things in our lives are computers. What's a robot?
I suppose in the project we take a very simple view. There's three main things that a robot needs to be able to do. Sense. So it needs to be able to take in data, understand it, collect data from its environment. Think, it needs to be able to analyze that data, so often artificial intelligence, etc. And then it needs to be able to act. So, there's a lot of technologies that will sense and think, but then you need to go and identify the course of action. So the robot goes that step further, and there needs to be some element of action triggered without human intervention, if you like. Now, it could be something relatively simple if you take that definition of sense, think and act. Like if you look at MooCall, they've got the Irish company, they've got the apps that will monitor an animal that's about to birth. And, based on indicators such as movement or heat or whatever it might be, it'll take in the data, it'll analyze the data, and if it determines that birthing event is imminent, the action will be a notification to the farmer. So that's a relatively simple action. I suppose in AgRoboFood, within the animal industry, there's robotics have advanced quite a lot in recent years, and there's a lot of really cool technologies out there. In AgRoboFood, we're trying to trigger more of that in horticulture and arable farming, if you like. So solving more of the problems in that area. Not to say we're not doing it in animals. There is an aspect of it on the animal husbandry side. But yeah, so that'd be the definition we'd look at within the project.
And to use the moo call example, because the benefit of that is that the farmer doesn't have to get up 3 or 4 times in the night to go out and check, is the cow calving? No, I can go back to bed for another 2 hours.
Spot on.
Yeah.
I grew up on a mixed farm, and at lambing season, my dad would say to myself and my sister, you can have the car to go out to the nightclub, but when you come back, you go and check for lambs. So 2 or 3 in the morning, you'd be going out to check if any lambs have been born, and you'd have to bring them in.
Yeah, that's the practicalities of it, isn't it, really?
That's the practicalities of it, yeah.
Yeah. So the definition of a robot, Kieran, of what sense, think and act, does that chime through with your understanding of a robot as well?
Yeah, and I think it does, absolutely. And I believe that just to give another example, and I guess the sense, think, and act a piece, right? I suppose it could be on one robot. If we think of one robot working in a production line, for instance, we'd be familiar with that picture. But if we look at it at farm level, right, we may not have. We've got robotic milking systems now. So we've systems whereby the cows come in, they get automatically milked, right, which is putting a whole lot of technology together, from vision systems to the robot itself, and then also to monitor, I guess, as well, the animals, right? So looking at the animals and seeing, the health, and for example, like that the moo call device, collars to decide, okay, does this animal need some health treatment, for example, and then as animals are leaving a milking parlour, there's automation in the gates. So what we see now more and more is how can these systems get connected together so that you have a full robotic solution on a farm, for example. So if an animal needs to go for artificial insemination, for example, they go out one particular direction. If they need to see the vet for another antibiotic, for example, they go to another pen, and if they're free to go out, then they can go directly to another direction. So connecting systems together, as well, is very important. So you can have that sense, think, act piece, I suppose, needing to be deployed across different pieces of hardware at farm level. And I think that's very often the challenge that's posed, and that's where there's a big opportunity for the research, that you've lots of different companies then coming together with their own individual technologies. And one of the challenges is trying to come together to transfer data, to transfer information. How is it done? So there's lots of, I suppose, challenges around doing that and managing that piece. But I think that's where a lot of value can be added, is making those connections and finding the solutions for those projects. And there's a large research element there, as well, because, there's development to be done there,
So the example that I gave you a few minutes ago about my friend's brother with the drone. So I think they're kind of, he's just into it. He likes the idea of the drone, but he has to physically fly the drone. Now he can sit in his kitchen and fly it, or sit out the back garden and do it, but he has to set off the drone, fly it away, blah blah blah, do all its stuff, and then he takes the approach. He has to interpret what he sees on the screen, and then take whatever appropriate action is there. The idea to take that to an AgRoboFood, or to that kind of robotics level, would be if there was a level of autonomy to it. So perhaps the drone could take off at a certain time of the day, pre-programmed time of the day, or whatever it might be, and check out whatever field or fields were appropriate, and then maybe infer something from what it sees, and possibly either take an action or notify the farmer or farmers or group or whoever it might be that, hey, I think there's something up at this field, or hey, the grass isn't as high on this field as maybe it should be, or whatever it might be. Would that be a fair way of taking that manual operation to the next level, even though both involve technology?
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose, because, as I mentioned, you want to use that technology to be able to I suppose, reduce some of the labour that needs to be done by the farmer. So,
Yes.
if he has the choice to go and walk the farm, or if he needs to fly the drone, it's probably, if he needs to spend the time to fly the drone, it's probably as well off that he gets the health benefit of going for the walk. But you hit the nail on the head with the autonomous part, right? So really, what you need to get the saving in terms of labour is that you need the drone to be able to work independently. Right, and that's I suppose where we would see, for example, how that might work would be you'd have maybe in the field or on the farm, you'd have like a landing area for the drone that might be on like a trailer, to make a visual comparison, and that trailer might have a solar panel on it where it's able to supply power for the drone, for instance. It might also be an IoT platform, if you like, so it's gathering the data from the drone, so it's gathering the imagery, it's gathering maybe in data around grass height or whatever other other features it's looking at in the farm, number of animals, for example, in the paddock, and it's downloading that information, if you like, to the IoT platform in the farm, and that platform is then connected to the cloud, if you like. So it's transferring all the data to the cloud, and that data then is analyzed by a piece of software. So it's taking the data, it's analyzing it by a piece of software, and then that data, that analysis is allowing then the farmer to take an action. So it's the saying, okay, based on this information it's collected, this is your options, this is what you should do based on this information. So it really would be very powerful to have that kind of information coming to the farmers, and I suppose it's trying to find commercial opportunities for that is the thing. So we see that there's the potential use cases in terms of kind of information it could gather in terms of grass height, for example, but how do you make sure, how do you get the financial benefit for deploying that kind of technology? And I suppose it's bridging that gap at the moment is where the research is working on, and more it's getting the support then of the projects like the AgRoboFoods to be able to connect companies and actors to these kinds of projects, so that the commercial benefits are obtained. And I suppose the focus we have in the agritech cluster is connecting the Irish companies, the people who have the skills to develop these technologies well, with the supports, so that we can provide, so that Irish companies can provide these technologies in a commercial scale globally.
So, Christine, you sent me on a link to a case study about AgRoboFood that was it's hosted on the Enterprise Ireland website, and in the case study it talks about how Ireland is doing quite well in the dairy sector when it comes to technology and the adoption of technology, but not so well in other areas. Is that because the dairy sector is financially so large in Ireland? Is that the reason why that is?
I think I wouldn't say it's not doing well. I mean, I think just even in other countries, some of the livestock farming, the adoption of technology in livestock farming is at a more advanced level. But yes, I mean, I suppose we're a strong dairy country. There would have been significant investment in the sector. If you look at horticulture, and there's kind of pressure on farmers now to produce more grain, to produce more crops in recent weeks and stuff. But I suppose where in countries where robotics are being used more, or beginning to be used more, will be countries with maybe larger land parcels, if you like. So the robots can be used more effectively, or they might be overall larger farm sizes, and the economics of those larger farms can justify that experimentation at an earlier stage. But you mentioned drones and things earlier, and we all know that technologies, as they become more advanced and more accepted, and they become cheaper as well, they become more affordable, and as they're proven, that all helps with the uptake of technologies. So in Europe, we see a lot of experimentation in the Netherlands, for example, in Germany, in countries that might have these larger parcel sizes.
So when you talk about parcel size, you're talking about kind of flatter land, where
yeah. just a kind of flatter land but larger farms,
Yes. Okay.
So larger areas under crop, for example.
Right.
So it's
Okay.
a land parcel size, So if you're experimenting with an automated piece of machinery, it's possibly a little bit more forgiving, especially as that technology is being developed, if it doesn't have to turn as much, or, there aren't as many hedges to consider, or it doesn't have to move from parcel to parcel. But that's not to say that these technologies aren't suitable for Ireland. The technologies are advancing all of the time. We're going to be promoting the use of these technologies that are being validated right now in these innovation experiments. And, going down the road, there'll be opportunities, hopefully, to transfer some of those learnings across here.
And I think just to go along with that discussion now, I suppose when you look at the Irish farming landscape, right, I suppose the size, as Christine mentioned there, the size and scale of the farms wouldn't be as big, let's say, as you see in Europe or beyond. But I guess the diversity in the farming is really relevant for what we're talking about, because there's a wide range from the dairy, from the livestock, let's say beef production, to the arable tillage farming. So it can be a really good test bed to be able to test technologies on a wide range of applications. And I think there's a big opportunity there for Ireland to get more engaged in doing that. And that's then can be technologies that could be, let's say, developed these farm sizes and then deployed to larger farm sizes. So it could work both ways. So these innovation experiments that we talk about, I would like to see, Irish farms being getting more access to these experiments and taking more part in them, because once we see the technologies and see the benefits, and as Christine mentioned, as scale is increased with the use of the technologies, the price point will drop, So it's about providing that support so that we can do those experiments as well,
Just coming back to the network aspect of AgRoboFood, and I mean the human network, not a computer network. The idea is that these things that are going on in the Netherlands or Germany aren't just locked up in the Netherlands or Germany. Farmers or the farming community, the agricultural community in Ireland can learn from that and try it out for themselves, and also contribute back into that, because maybe what we've learned over here about dairy farming or technological innovations in that respect can also inform them, which again, it's the sharing of knowledge rather than everything just being locked up in a local capacity. Yeah. Is that
absolutely
correct?
And I think it also, Rob, it helps to reduce duplication. So having that wide community base, you don't have a farmer in the Netherlands and a farmer in Ireland, testing out the same piece of technology. You want to try and have the innovation experiments spread across different experiments in different areas. And I think you want to try and, as much as possible, and of course it's hard to eliminate or avoid duplication of effort on the scale we're talking about, but using the wide community, let's say in projects like the AgRoboFoods, it enables one then to be able to say, okay, this project is supported in this area and this project gets supported here. We don't want to do two of the same projects. We want to do a range of projects and bring all the information together and then share the information across all the stakeholders involved. And I think all together then there can be more progress made in the technology development side.
It can be a little bit incremental as well. So Kieran talked about all of the different components and facets that you have to consider with robotic solutions, such as interoperability, such as computer vision. A project that the Walton is involved in is related to the digitization of CAP. And
sorry, tell me what CAP is now. Sorry, just
so the Common Agricultural Policy.
So this is the European policy.
Yeah, so farmers have to submit claims every year to secure payments based on various different schemes. And Walton has worked with the Department of Agriculture as part of a European project to develop an app, a geotag photo app, which can capture data about a farm, and it can be used to support a farmer's claim. But we'd like to go a step further, and we would like to use computer vision and AI to be able to classify what is seen in a photo rather than humans having to go through and classify what's seen in a photo. So classifying, whether something is under permanent pasture, whether there's scrub on a piece of land, which might be deemed ineligible, whatever it might be. So that then can lead itself nicely into robotic solutions, because that computer vision is addressing itself to the Irish landscape and Irish problems. So that can feed into robotic solutions that might be developed. So it is incremental. There are various different components to it. And we've got a lot of strong technology providers in Ireland through IMAR, through Walton, who are developing technologies that will feed into more of these robotic solutions.
Yeah. I can see, or I can imagine, so many application areas and so many problems that need to be solved. We're talking at quite a high level, but you can, even we've mentioned computer vision quite a lot, but that's a really complex problem, So and I'm sure trying to distinguish between a gorse bush and, I don't know, something else that kind of looks like a gorse bush but isn't a weed might be very, very difficult.
It is a complex problem, but we've done a little bit of work previously on habitat classification for the Department of Rural Affairs. And, I work with a lot of deep technologists and very scientific people who get excited about solving these problems. And, Kieran has access to the equivalent on the robotics side, so there's a complete appetite and depth of knowledge within these research centres to solve those kind of problems. And then the next step is to go and apply them, in the agri-food sector, in the agri-tech sector.
And not trying to sound political, because I'm not political, but this is an example of, I suppose, one of the benefits of the EU, for example, that, these are things that most people don't see, like the likes of ye working with a pan-European network, working on robots for agricultural context. You're not going to see that on the front page of a newspaper, really, but there's lots of people, I'm sure, like in the cluster, I'm sure there's many hundreds of people working across this.
Oh, that's absolutely, go ahead. That's absolutely fair.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think, as you mentioned, it's great to be linked in with these EU projects, because the supports are there. And then what we try to do, I suppose, is attract projects to leverage some of those supports, and I suppose always with the eye on, how can it benefit the farming, but how can it benefit companies who are developing agri-tech solutions for farming. And I suppose on the robotics piece there as well, we've talked a lot about maybe the developments of robotics at farm level, but also there's a lot of development going on with robotics at the company space as well. So the processes for producing machines, for example, right? So there's a lot of demands on I suppose competitiveness side there globally in reducing the costs of those machines, and robotics within the manufacturing processes has a big part to play there. Let's say moving from manual welding to robotic welding. We have a big shortage at the moment of welding the trade, and as companies are looking at how they can automate or how they can include some elements of robotics into their processes. And that's one of the aspects, I guess, we're getting involved in as well at the cluster, is supporting companies to improve their process productivity for producing their products.
So a rising tide raises all boats.
Yeah, because I guess you've got to look across the entire value stream, so and that's I suppose where the focus we have is on early stage, on the primary producer of food, the farmer, and then on the suppliers to those farmers, so those who are supplying technology solutions, machines to farmers, and I think that's where Ireland can have a big part to play, because we've very strong agricultural heritage, we have huge diversity in our farming practice. And that coupled with, I suppose, our experience in technology as well, and our skills from a technology, engineering, science point of view, it's about bringing all of those disciplines together to develop the solutions that are required for the future to, I suppose, make farming more and more efficient, and to minimize the impact on the environment.
Yeah. If somebody wanted to find out more about AgRoboFood and the projects that are the general area, what's the best place to go?
AgRoboFood.eu has all of the information, including the innovation experiments. We'll be updating our portal and launching our portal very soon, which for members, and it's very easy to join the AgRoboFood network, where you can find this catalogue of services. It's going to improve the discovery of the services and the companies that are available through AgRoboFood. But AgRoboFood.eu, that's where you'll get the information.
Okay, final question, and this is not specific to AgRoboFood, but is more of a general research question. If there was somebody who was maybe at the start of their research career or thinking about getting into research, if I asked her for one bit of advice for them, what would it be? So Kieran, we'll go to yourself first.
Yeah, so I think to get involved in research in this space, I suppose one important thing would be to have the interest, I suppose, in the agriculture, maybe coming from an agriculture background, but also having interest in the technologies, in the engineering, in the robotics, and I suppose those who are interested in the systems level thinking, so being able to not just be focused on one piece of hardware, for instance, but more and more in the connected systems type of idea. Where you're looking at a lot of different disciplines, and I think more and more these kinds of research skills are what's needed to develop the solutions for the future. So I think there's lots of opportunities for researchers to get involved in projects across the various research centres, in Ireland and beyond. So I think there are great opportunities at the Walton Institute, also at the IMAR Research Centre here in the MTU. In Tralee, it's a really active space at the moment, and they're really good connections in terms of supports for the projects, and more engagement then by the actual companies as well. So there are great opportunities after a piece of research to gain employment with some of these companies afterwards. I think is an important piece. So it can be a pathway maybe after an undergrad degree to go into research and then to progress on into a role within some of the companies in the agri-tech space.
Mm. And Christine, same question to you. If you had a bit of advice for somebody perhaps at the start of their research career, or even thinking about getting into research?
I'd say it's, I suppose living and working in the EU, it's exciting being involved in research because there's good supports and good funding available to solve really interesting problems. I'd say two things, concentrate broadly on a domain that you're really interested in, and then you'll really enjoy what you do. The other thing I would say would be about collaboration, and that would be about growing your network, finding an organisation that you can work well in, work with people that you have good working chemistry with, so people that will challenge you, that you can learn from. And I'd say don't be afraid to go and find those people or those organisations. Go, if you find an organisation online that you like the sound of, reach out to them, introduce yourself, use your own personal networks to connect in with people or companies that you want to get connected in with. Be a little bit shameless about going out and just growing your network, I would say.
Excellent. Those are wonderful words to finish on. To Christine and Kieran, thank you so much for speaking with me today. I wish you all the best with AgRoboFood. I'll be keeping an eye on the website to see what you come up with next, because this is certainly not going to end when AgRoboFood ends. I'd imagine there's a lot more to come. And touch wood, the next time we do this, we can do it in person.
Great. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Rob.
Thanks for listening to 9plus. You can follow us on Twitter at 9plus podcast. If you found what you heard interesting, please consider leaving us a kind review on your podcast platform of choice. And we'll be back with another episode next week.